And hello everyone and welcome back to another video, and today we got another review as it has been requested by one of my members and haven't done those in a while, so quickly just running through. We're gonna be comparing it or just checking out the tank stats while having a replay, this time being Senko here, and then having depending on how long, 1 or 2 live games, and just evaluate the tank in my eyes, what I think of it, and similar. So let's start. I'm gonna be comparing it on the sideline with the i7, both here equipped with calibrated shells, as this is how I run both these tanks. And yeah, let's get started. So the 5A has a 130mm, meaning that it has 460 alpha, which is exactly like the i7. Shell velocity is alright with a 900. It's not great, but it's not terrible either. Your pen of 273 with the Kali is pretty nice, but basically the exact same as the i7. And with heat you get 330, you have 390 instead of the 460 alpha. And for those interested with HE, you have 600, meaning Senko just had quite the low roll there. Regardless of that, your reload with calibrated is 11.4. which therefore results in a pretty low DPM of 2400. But this thing is not meant to do damage quickly, but to trade. So yeah, let's see if we can display that later. It has an alright aim time of 2.45 seconds. It's not the best, but certainly not the worst among heavy tanks. The accuracy of 0.35 is not great either. It's really just a lot mediocre here on this tank. Soft stats are great for gun handling, then really nothing special though. It has 7 degrees of gun depression though, which is pretty surprising considering this is a Chinese vehicle, which aren't known to have great gun depression, so it is pretty much welcomed here. Has an extra degrees over the i7, so you definitely like to see that. In terms of mobility, this thing runs 50 forwards and 15 backwards, being exactly the same as the i7. But that thing has its advantage here, and that is with the horsepower being 300 more. The 5A here only having 800, the i7 outshines it massively. But this thing weighs a lot less, so the power to weight is actually quite similar, 16.6 here for the 5A. Not half bad, means it accelerates rather quickly, one of the more faster heavy tanks on tier 10 for sure. Traverse speed is alright, but nothing really worth mentioning. You have 2300 stock hit points, which is one of the lowest among its tier, and compared to other heavies, so you want to be a bit careful, but the alpha damage with the trading, if you do it carefully and properly, you should be fine. On paper, this thing has quite a good chunk of armor though, 300 in the turret front, 180 and 60 on the side and rear respectively, meaning you can get a cheat here in the back of this turret by high caliber guns, so be careful. TDs can definitely cheat and it will hurt. 140, 120 and 60 for the hull is not great either, means sometimes you can side scrape, but often it doesn't quite work. And yeah, nice ace here from Senko, and let's now have our live game. I don't like really showing replays, although I just managed to get an ace in the warm-up. I feel like we should just play this normally. Now, personally, I'm not the biggest of fans of this tank. The fact that the reload, therefore the DPM is already rather low, does not make it spectacular, and you're also being forced to use calibrated, at least for me. I like having 330mm of heat penetration on all of my tier 10s, because that is kind of like my threshold for ice, for E100 turrets, mouse, and all of that, to have a pretty high chance to pen when I know where to shoot, when everything below is just really not great. And the stock heat pen on this thing is not the greatest, so Kali it has to be here. Making the reload and DPM even lower, or well, for the reload higher, and that's just not that great in my opinion. Gun handling can also really be trolling you sometimes, and you gotta aim in quite a long time for this gun to work properly, but we managed to put in our first shot. Dynasty here, you want to more or less control the center ridge. We have an I-7 on the enemy team. We're not getting contested in this middle here, which does make it a little bit relieving to play. Not quite able to hit the weak spot in that Moisian here. I don't really want to sit out in the open here. This thing does not spout peculiar good armor. As we can see here, it's not really slanted. It has a little bit of a pike nose, but it stops midway, so it doesn't fully commit. Meaning, the armor is not as great as the I-7. The turret also, with those two cupolas, is a lot weaker. And a lot easier to penetrate as well. The I-7 there, a lot more well-rounded here. But of course, because it has that fully fledged pike nose, the lower plate is bigger. So you don't want to expose that too much. The extra degree of gun depression really helps this tank a lot though, I think. Over the I-7, which is like the tank to compare to. Some of you might not like that, but I think that's the only way. And the I-7 is not a great tank to begin with, so not really that great to use it as a comparison, but that's all we really have, so gotta make the best of it. Now it's only 3 tanks left. Team is doing quite a good job here. I want to press more on that I-7 here, actually. Managed to pick him up. I am still full HP, so I can now use my hit points to just push in. Use the wrong rep kit there, actually. So with this, you'd really want to play hold down, at least in short to mid ranges, because the gun is not that accurate. It really isn't. So you got to be careful about how you do and what exactly you play this tank as. It's definitely not a long range support. Nor can it really tank anything. So you should probably try to not be in the first line either. The speed does allow for that to happen, but I don't think it should be done. So playing as a second line support and just using that alpha and maybe let other people take shots for you is gonna help you come out on top here, because especially with low DPM tanks, usually you expect them to have a good amount of armor, or at least a lot of hit points to just sustain and out-survive your opponents. The 5A has neither of those two things, nor great armor or a lot of HP. Like all of the collectors and premiums on tier 10, at least for the heavy tanks. Like if we compare to the I-4, it has 400 more, basically meaning it can take another shot more than us, which is not that great for these tanks that have the low amount of hit points, and the I-4 just being better in a lot of areas than this thing. Makes it not that worthwhile, but I think it's a good mix, this vehicle. Even if I don't like it, if you think about getting this whenever it does come to sale, it's not a hard no for me, to put it that way, but it's just hard to use, really. During my warm-up before making this video, because, you know, don't want to embarrass myself too much, the start really didn't go well, and you gotta have to be somewhat proficient in aiming, I think, to use this tank properly. Because due to you having that low DPM, you really want to make sure you hit your shots. Oh, that is a nice HE, 750 there. We like to see those. But yeah, is this tank worth it? Probably. But I don't recommend it to others. It is definitely not an easy tank to play. And it's not... how do you put it? It's not an easy tank to play, but it shouldn't be that hard to learn how to use it either. Because I don't think the skill ceiling on this thing is high. It's pretty similar to how an IS-4 or an i7 play like. It's actually a pretty good mix in between them. This having... I'm not quite sure how much the IS-4 has in gun depression. It might actually have the same. But This has definitely the weakest armor out of all three of them. And with the low HP, definitely the survivability being terrible. But the gun is not that bad. It's just really the premium pen doesn't allow you to run gun rammer effectively. At least for my personal needs. In general though, I do suggest trying this thing out if you have it. Now, if you don't like these kinds of tanks, then I would not be surprised if you were to sell this tank for gold and just buy something that fits you better. But it's not a bad tank. But I don't think it should be as much praise, getting as much praise as it does. And with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about the 5A in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching and see you again next time. Bye bye.